Let's Talk with Lakshmi, a show about us, our people, our community, our culture, our experiences. And viewers, when we think of Indian dancing, we may think of classical dancing, such as Bharatanatyam, Kathak, Urvasi, and so much more. We may think of hip-hop, we may think of merengue, we may think of ballet. But when we think about Trinidad and Tobago, what do we think of? Do we think of whining? Do we think of jiggling? Do we think of chutney? Well, viewers, I have a very special guest in the house today, and she is no other than Denyse Baboolall, who is a professional chutney dancer. Denyse, welcome to Let's Talk with Lakshmi. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be back in New York.
Well, yes, Denyse, I know you moved to Florida, and you're here visiting. So we're so excited to have you on the show. I know it was kind of a last minute thing, and I want to thank you for that. But Denyse, you are from Trinidad and Tobago, right? We don't usually have many guests from Trinidad and Tobago, so we're really excited to hear about this spicy country and the spiciness. And like I said, you're a professional chutney dancer. But before we go into your dancing, let's talk a little bit about you. Where are you from in Trinidad? What was life like growing up for Denyse?
Well, I'm very simple. I'm a traditionalist, and I believe in keeping things authentic. You can spice it up and you can twist it a little bit, but just keep it authentic. So my style is a little bit of traditional custom, but with a pinch of modern.
Now, you're from Trinidad.
Right.
Where did you grow up in Trinidad? What was life, growing up in Trinidad?
Life in Trinidad was basically with my, living with my grandmother,
Okay.
who's basically a strict, staunch Hindu.
Most
So-
grandmothers, right?
Yeah. So I grew up with that kind of, the strict Hindu way.
Okay.
And then when I, about 11 years old, went to live with my parents, which everything turned into Presbyterian.
Well, I mean, back up there a little bit. You said you lived with your grandmother for your first 11 years, and then you went off to live with your parents.
Parents.
Where were your parents?
My parents were in Central,
Uh-huh.
in Chabonas, but my mother was in Point Fortin. I guess that basically is, when parents now get married. When my parents just got married and they had me 9 months after. 9 months
Oh,
after.
so they weren't ready.
Yes.
Yeah, to take
So
care of
that's what ended up happening.
it. Okay.
And then straight after high school, I came to New York. And then from there, went to BMCC. And that's where life began.
Okay.
I met Fayez Ali, who invited me to the Student of Indian Descent Club. Even though, living in Astoria, I looked in the mirror and I saw myself as a white American. Blonde hair, blue eyes is what I was rocking at the moment. And from there, went to the Student of Indian Descent Club and heard Guyanese dialect for the first time, and I stood there like, on earth, what kind of language was that? And then from there, Fayez invited me to Soca Paradise for the first time. And I was like, there's Indians in New York?
Right, because in Astoria, it's what, mostly like Greeks?
Greeks and
Okay.
Italians.
Mhm.
So I grew up seeing Greeks and Italians. So now you bring me to Soca Paradise, I'm hearing soca, I'm hearing Indian music. And I think I was so dumbstruck for the first half an hour.
Okay.
And I'm here like, and I'm seeing everybody dancing Indian. They're dancing chutney. And I was like,
They know how to do that.
that exists in New York.
So you left Trinidad, came to New York. You didn't think that the Indians were living in New York? Or?
Not in Astoria. Everything,
Okay.
where I came and where my parents is till today, Astoria was everything Italian and Greek. Every restaurant, every club, every store. There was no curry. There's no curry in Astoria.
Okay.
So from there, I think that's when my reality came in. Because now I want to go more. Then he took me to Sing's Roti Shop. I had a doubles. After 2 years in New York, I had a doubles. And then from there, he took me to a fundraiser and I met Gaura Singh and Preeta Singh from the Rajkumari Cultural Center.
Okay. Now I know you're very much involved in the Rajkumari Cultural Center. So tell me, how did you transition from living in Trinidad moving to Astoria, thinking you were this white girl, and now getting involved with the Rajkumari Cultural Center, which we all know is a very renowned group in the community that focuses on Indian custom, arts, heritage, culture.
I think that's where I'm reborn.
Okay.
I met Gaur Singh, and he says, oh, the blonde hair looks very beautiful. And then a couple of weeks later, he says, do you know you really look beautiful in a brown, a little red. You know, little by little, that transition began. I realized that people were looking at me. They were looking at me like, well, what is she? Everybody was asking, well, what are you? And I'm like, from Trinidad. And they're like, oh, you know. So I realized now I'm a sore thumb. I'm the one sticking out, not them sticking out. So I started to tone down the hair. I took the contacts off. And then I started to be cool. I started to blend in. And then Gaur Singh's, I started to learn dance with Gaur Singh.
The Kathak dance,
The
right?
Kathak dance, and back into Kathak dance again. And then Gaur said to me, he says, Denyse, have you ever wondered where your family is from? Your ancestors?
Right.
And I'm like, no, that's not important.
Not really,
He
right?
says, how about you go talk to your grandmother and talk to everybody and find out,
Okay.
where are you from? I had no reason, I didn't understand why he asked me to do that. But then I found out my grandmother is from Bihar, but where chutney came from. My great-grandmother was a wedding house dancer, or the kind is called a bottom house dancer.
Okay.
And my great-great-grandmother was also a wedding dancer. That was when you arranged a marriage, you know, the matikor, where they dress as a man
Right.
and you dress as a woman, and you explain what was going to happen through song and dance. That was my grandparents.
So
My grandmother's
it
great
was in the
grandmother.
blood.
I didn't realize that. So with this research, when I went back to him, and I'm like, well, this is it. This is, he says, well, this is the reason why you dance the way you dance. So I was like, okay. So he says, now you need to take chutney in a different direction.
Now let's talk about the chutney dancing. You were in Trinidad. You were learning Kathak dancing,
Right?
and you were also, peeping in at the overseas classes.
Right.
So you were feeling that overseas also, which I think you would feel that as well, because I know you're very close to the mother.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so now you're realizing that there's this drawness to chutney,
Yes.
and you mentioned the word
Chutney.
chati.
The
Now,
original
is
word.
chati the original word for chutney?
Correct.
Okay. So, Denyse, when I think of chutney, right, I will imagine, some girl in a very sequins outfit, maybe really short top and the skirts down to the hip, and she's whining and she's jiggling and she's gyrating and she's whining, and personally I'm a dancer, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me it is a form of art.
Right.
But growing up, when people talk about chutney, especially, I'll say it, my mother, okay? If my mom sees chutney or hear chutney, she does say, the lawlessness or wildness. What do you have to say about that? I mean, is chutney a form of art, a form of dance? Or is it what the elders might, the elderly might say is wildness? What is chutney?
Well, chutney came from Bihar. Our ancestors came from Bihar, brought that folk dance.
Okay.
And that folk dance and folk music was Bhojpur. And it's basically a folk art form.
Yes.
In Guyana, there's a style called Rajdhar, which is a mix of the Kathak and the chutney put together. And it's an art form that tells a story as well, like any other dance. But in today's society, or others who are not trained in it, tend to mix it with, or I should say, when chati came to the Caribbean, especially in Trinidad, chati was then converted to chutney, which is an influence of what's happening in the Caribbean. So the salsa and the African and all the other folk styles from the different parts of India that migrated there came together.
Okay.
So when it came together and it's all mixed, the storytelling went out the door. So it now is a whining, a grinding, a gyrating, and no longer storytelling, no longer an art form of some sort of caliber where you can watch it and says, oh my God, that's such a tasteful dance, even though it's full of drum and, because I'm sure if your mom saw my dancers chutney dance, she'll be like, oh my God, that dance nice.
Right.
Because it doesn't have the, what you would call the lawlessness in it. And that's what people don't realize. Not because you can whine and grind mean you're a chutney dancer. Chutney dancing has, they talk about Bollywood. What is Bollywood? A mix of Western culture, Western dances, mixed with classical and, folk Indian stuff. Then what is chutney? Chutney is a mix of folk styles, mixed with a little bit of art, Caribbean and influences. It has classical, it has folk, it has salsa, it has African influences in it that makes chutney.
Now, I remember the first time I saw you dance chutney. I'm not sure the venue we were at, maybe it was a wedding. Not exactly sure, but I remember saying, oh my God, this girl can move every single inch body part on her.
Back then.
Back then, right? But I mean, I know you're teaching now, but it was amazing that you actually had control of every single part of your body, I believe. I mean, just like with Kathak dancing, they will say, if a Kathak dancer has 100 bells on her gungaroo, if she's talented enough, she can control one bell out of that 100. And I felt when I saw you dancing chutney for the first time, that I believe you could control any inch, any part of your body. At that time, I was actually quite amazed. One other thing is, I know with the Rajkumari Cultural Center, which you're, like I said, you're part of, you grew up in there, you would say.
17 years.
17 years.
17 years.
And they, they believe in upholding the culture and the heritage and the old folk dancing and the old folk singing and anything old, anything that belongs to us.
Yes, preserving Indo Caribbean
And
arts.
when we think of these older dancing, like the Raj dancing, Rajdhar dancing, who does that? I mean, no one really does that. Maybe you might find your older grandmother actually even knowing what that is and the style and the footwork on
exactly how your grandmother used to dance, with just the waist moving side to side, and her hand is basically explaining everything, and the mouj way of spinning. That's the traditional Rajdhar style. The footwork, and that is done. And that is why our mission, both with JayaDevi and Rajkumari Center here in New York, is to preserve these art forms. Because you already see how fast the now generation is going. Right. So if we don't stop them and say, this is what our culture is and you've got to preserve it, we will lose them.
Now let me ask you something. You mentioned that the chutney style of dancing came from Bihar. And you mentioned Kathak may have came from Uttar Pradesh.
Right. More northern India.
Yeah. Now my grandparents I know are from UP. And I'm assuming your grandparents are from Bihar. Great grandparents.
Right.
Right?
On my mother's
so,
side.
Would you say the ships that originally left India, most of them that were from Bihar perhaps went over to Trinidad, and maybe most of the ones that came from UP went over to Guyana? Would you say that? I'm asking this only because I know chutney dancing is more popular in Trinidad, whereas more of the classical
and South Indians
is more popular in Guyana.
Right. Trinidad has a lot of people who are from Uttar Pradesh and the other northern parts from Trinidad. So I don't have any facts itself, But being with the Rajkumari Center when we're doing the Jahaji studies and we're learning our ancestors itself, we can safely say, the certain parts of North and West India probably have gone in the first shipment. And then the second one had probably a different batch. Because in Guyana there's also a huge population of Madrasis, more than in Trinidad.
Okay.
So it has to have, I think it's probably it stopped here and then, another boat probably had a little bit of everything.
Let's talk a little bit about JayaDevi. I know that you left New York, first of all. You're now living in Florida. You're teaching dancing. You have a puja store. You're very heavily involved in the mandirs. But you started this nonprofit organization called JayaDevi.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about JayaDevi.
JayaDevi started in 2008
Okay.
in a puja store.
Okay.
All the classes were in a puja store, and it started off really great. The dance class wasn't accepted 100% by the community at large, because they were, like when the parents visit other venues or go to solicit the dance class, people will keep pushing the existing dance classes. And I felt, they keep looking at it like, well, who is she?
Okay.
We don't know her. And I'm like, okay, so I need to get out there. So we start promoting the classes more. We started to go out there. That's when I did the first performance. I was like, well, you don't know who I am? I'll show you who I am.
Okay.
But it was Diwali time. So I did a Durga dance. And the kids were only trained for 6 weeks. And I'm like, y'all gonna do a little something, a minute dance. And they did what they did in class. They did their tatkars, and they did their hand movements, and that was the dance.
So you're starting off with Kathak.
Right. No music. They said their tate tatas on stage, and everybody's looking at like, what kind of dance is this? But I had to introduce what was Kathak, because it's really not existing in the Indo Caribbean community in South Florida.
Now, why did you leave New York to go to Florida? To start dancing?
No, I left my job with Verizon, and I moved to Florida to fulfill a dream I had, which was to open a puja store that was all vegetarian and that catered for all your puja needs. So whether it was a Sanatan puja or a Madras puja, you need the vegetables, the flowers, the sarjams, the murtis, the little other sarjams. I had everything.
Okay. So you left New York to go to Florida to open up a puja store. And from there you decided to start JayaDevi Arts.
From there, JayaDevi School of Dance at that time got so huge,
Okay.
and the performances were so much, I couldn't juggle the two. So when my lease was up, I'm like, okay, let me focus on this. And then in 2010, I changed the name from JayaDevi School of Dance to JayaDevi Arts Inc. J-A-I, and made it nonprofit.
Now, I know other than dancing, JayaDevi Arts is also a women's support group. Tell us a little bit about that.
In our community, the domestic violence, the identity crisis, the spirituality crisis is prominent in the younger generation in our community. And sometimes they're just so confused and so lost that they just need a place to come and vent. I have some women, mothers, who are being abused by their husbands or being verbally abused. It's bottled inside. They have no place to vent. They have no place to turn for help.
Okay.
And they come to JayaDevi's support group and they just explode. They just explode. We've even had one situation where we assisted in, it was a very abusive relationship, and we assisted in the divorce. by, you know, letting them know that she came to the support group. We knew about it. You know, we've seen the blue blacks and the black eyes. We've seen it and documented it, things like that. So in a way we kind of help. If it's too much, we do recommend that they seek professional help, but you know our community. They're not gonna go to a shelter or women's battered or domestic violence group. But in a private setting, they would explode and let all the emotions out and move on.
So what happens after? What happens after they explode?
Either,
What's the next step?
well, you know our community, some of them, they're not gonna leave their husband, they're gonna stay in it, but then we try to tell them, you have to handle it in a different way, or when he starts like that, you gotta sit down and talk to him, or we try to find an avenue where they can try to institute a little bit of change. A little bit of change. It is modern times, you can't let the kids witness this. You have to try to like nip it in the bud before he starts screaming. So we kind of like just give simple things with it.
Okay. So JayaDevi is not only dancing, you're a women's support group. Tell us a little bit about some of the performances that you guys have done. And I actually know you're heavily involved in the Diwali Nagar in Florida.
Yeah, the Diwali Nagar JayaDevi dance every year for the last 3 years.
Okay.
We perform at every major event. This year has actually been a really great year for JayaDevi. We were the only chutney dance group selected to perform at the first cricket test series, West Indies versus New Zealand,
Okay.
at the cricket stadium in Sunrise, Florida. We performed at the Chutney in the Park. We were the only dance group chosen. We performed at Asia Food Festival, and many of the major events, Mandirs, cultural events, Asian events, just a slew from West Palm Beach to Fort Lauderdale to Miami.
So 5 years from now, what would you like to see for your organization?
5 years from now, I would like JayaDevi to be able to have a cultural center open to the public, not just for classes, but for events. Florida don't have a lot of Indo Caribbean venues that has professional lights, state-of-the-art sound, has a projector. These are things you have to add in separately. You have to be able to have the capability to record the sound direct from the feed and do the videos direct from the feed. This is something JayaDevi would like to have in the Indo Caribbean community in South Florida so that it benefits the community at large.
Awesome. And Denyse, I know you also do the Hussein program, right?
Right. Here in 2011, the Rajkumari Center did the Hussein program here. And my husband Narendra Badai was the actual Hussein builder. So what we decided to do is for 2013, first time in the entire Florida state, we are going to have Hussein.
Okay.
So it's
Now, I was never familiar with Hussein until I saw it, I think it was last year, with the Rajkumari Cultural Group. What is Hussein?
Hussein is in the month of Muharram with the Shiites, Muslims. They recreate the tomb, what's called a Taja, or different versions of, to get a better image, the Taj Mahal.
Right.
So those are the Tajas. And you create these Tajas to represent the Hassan and Hussein massacres when they died. And they build a replica and they do the whole ceremony. And it's basically a street parade of a passion play. So they have the drums, they're lined up, this Taja is paraded, they parade it in the savannah. And they have the drums and the beauty and the design.
Well, Denyse, any last words for our viewers?
Well, my thing is, our community, the parents, I think, is who this message needs to go out to. Parents need to allow their kids to take part in extracurricular activities, especially our or these things. We need to have our children learn, yes, you're born in America, but where you came from. So you gotta know where you came from in order to go forward.
To know where you're going.
To know where you're going and what to groom the next generation. So with that, then they'll not only learn to balance life, but they'll appreciate who they really are.
Excellent. Well, Denyse, it was a pleasure.
So great.
Thank you so much for coming down to Let's Talk with Lakshmi. I wish you lots of luck with JayaDevi and with the Hussein and with the parade and with all the kids and with the women's program. And you're doing a great job in Florida. I know Florida doesn't have much for the Indo Caribbeans, and I know there are some people like you and others that are making a difference and making a start in Florida. And I hope to come visit you in a few months to see the school and to see everything that you're doing.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, viewers, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Let's Talk with Lakshmi, where we interviewed the executive producer, director, a wonderful choreographer, Miss Denyse Baboolall. If you are in Florida and taking a look at this week's episode of Let's Talk with Lakshmi, and you'd like your daughters or sons or yourselves to learn Kathak or Risi, any type of Bollywood dancing and chutney dancing, please do give Denyse a call. I'll see you guys all next week, same time, same place. It's a date. Let's talk.
When thinking of shipping a barrel, box or sending money back home, think of the name you can trust. Think Lapakan. Lapakan has been serving our community for over 25 years, and a significant portion of every dollar spent at Lapakan goes to work in our community here and back home. Together, we are making a difference. For your shipping and money transfer needs, call Lapakan. Lapakan, the name we can trust.
2 months ago, after my mother's hospitalization, the doctors wanted to put her in hospice. And I'm like, they deemed her terminal. And I saw Mr. Thakur, I think the founder, on TV, and he was advertising this Indian community in Kings Harbor. It's a great Indian community where my mother feels at home, and she expresses her happiness to me whenever I come.
I know when I come, I feel happy. I stay couple and I see everybody, and I'm so happy.
I brought my mother here like a month and a half ago, and I haven't regretted my decision. It's one of the best decisions I've made for my mother. It's a home away from home.
Elegant Floral Design. We can help you beautify your event. No occasion is too big or too small. We specialize in floral decor and party planning for every event. Please call 718-322-9786. Please use promo code Lakshmi for a discount.
Plan that special day? Well, the most important thing is capturing that special moment. No matter what the occasion is, big or small, Digital Photo by Buddy can capture it all. For all of your memorable events, whether it is a wedding, graduation, anniversary, sweet 16, puja, baby shower, or 9-day, Buddy will do it all. Just call Buddy at 917-741-9876. Digital Photo by Buddy, capturing your memories. Please mention you saw this ad on Let's Talk with Lakshmi.